Love to kill a king today.
Kill a king, baby.
Head into the darkness.
Yeah.
We're getting what we signed up for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Kill it, kill it, kill it.
The reason why the king eider sits so high on the bucket list of a waterfowler is there's only a very few places on this planet that you might be able to get one. And the places are all harsh. They are harsh environments. These are hardy birds that live to 25 and 30 years old, if you can imagine. And the whole experience, the adventure, the harshness of the environment, just everything that it offers is what draws people like us to St. Paul Island.
I think king eiders for me, honestly, isn't about the duck. It's about who has and hasn't done it. And this is something that only can be done here. And for me, it was the newness of never being able to do it or do it anyway. This king eiders for me was more about me being able to accomplish that. And on the first morning, we got exactly what St. Paul has been described.
The wind was blowing too hard and the waves were too big. We were forced to hunt the shorelines.
The first couple of days we couldn't get out. The seas were way too big. As we sat in the rocks, all I can remember is the power of the water. I remember leaning over to my dad and saying, I just can't believe how heavy the water is. The anticipation of seeing one is just part of it, but the anticipation of maybe missing your chance. You know, you've seen flock after flock not make that close enough look, and when it happens, and it happens now. But the pressure weighs on you because we sit here for 2 or 3 days, you can't hunt. It really was hard.
My love and an appreciation for hunting and firearms and everything that I do today, I can thank my older brother, Steve. He was 10 years older than me, and I lost him at a young age. He was 28 years old and I was 18. And so I made myself a promise when I lost him that I would kind of live my life for the two of us. Hunting with my son is the opportunity, if nothing else, to spend quality time one-on-one with him.
My dad and I have shared it. I'm the only boy, and so really everything I've ever done hunting-wise is with my dad.
What do you think?
I don't know, it's been a lot of days on a point with not much success.
I'm ready to get on the water.
It's a good day. I mean, a little breezy, but we'll see, you know.
It's got to a point where we don't hunt as much anymore. I'm busy, he's busy, I have my own boys.
Shoot fast and shoot straight, get this thing over with.
Get in and get out fast as we can. For sure. I think it'll be a good day.
Oh, yeah.
My dad's not a young man anymore. He's not going to be able to do this forever.
Love to kill a king today.
Kill a king, baby.
Right on. Okay, let's do this.
Which we've been waiting 2 years for.
Well, let's get loaded up. Let's go.
Life is fragile. Life is very fragile. You acquire those understandings when you're out there in the element. Especially here on St. Paul Island. This is one of the harshest environments I've ever hunted in. And it gives you a real appreciation for how fragile life really is. Oh yeah, yeah, this is way cool.
Heading out into the darkness.
Yeah.
Guess that's why they call it the Bering Sea.
Into the abyss. Because it can go upside down real quick in this environment. Those guys on the boats are probably looking at us going, are you kidding me? Them guys going out in those things?
Well, here we are. Got out of the harbor with some pretty big swells. Holy cow. Out here in the middle of the Bering Sea.
Hunting is my ability to just express my love and appreciation for everything that God has given us.
We're getting what we signed up for sure.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
What a cool experience.
And my heart aches for those individuals who will never understand that, because they will never get into the field and really appreciate and see what Mother Nature is. You can go out, you can view wildlife and whatnot, but until you hunt wildlife and you're on their turf, under their conditions, you really do not establish a true appreciation for what God has created.
Good shot, good shot, good shot.
This is much more than just a hunt and a trip to St. Paul Island. This is a hunt with my son.
Look at
that we have been planning for a couple of years now. And it's something that we've worked hard for. We would lay out there all day long on the frozen ground waiting for a flock of geese to come in, and we would talk about things. We'd talk about life, what matters, what doesn't matter. And I call that when the spirit's right. And when the spirit's right, you can instill thoughts into your children's heads that you could never instill anywhere else. And so this is a culmination of a lot of things, this trip is. It's much, much more than just a duck hunt. This ought to be interesting.
Kill it, kill it, kill it. Oh, you got a hand, you got that hand.
Yeah, no.
Within any category of wildlife that you pursue, whether it be bighorn sheep, waterfowl, deer, there are certain species within those groups that those who pursue those animals and those birds their whole lives
That is a gorgeous bird.
dream of accumulating. And it's not like you sit down at an early age and you make this list and you check them off like a hit list. That's not it at all. It's just that when you achieve collecting those trophies and you have them mounted and they're in your trophy room, you can sit there when no one's around by yourself, maybe just you and your dog in your lap, and think about each adventure that you went on to collect those species. Well, you talk about the 11th hour. I had not killed a king, and we were drawing to the close of our hunt. And the weather was so violent we could not get out on the water, so we decided to tough it on the shore. And my son had taken a king, and all he wanted was for his dad to get one. And we sat there and sat there and sat there, and the wind howled in our face, and nothing had flown by within range. We could see birds way out there, but they're all flying the transition line between the white water and the dark water, and they were out of range. And my son later told me, he says, I just prayed that a stupid bird would come down the shoreline. And he says, it wasn't 15 seconds later. he and everybody else looked up and saw this big old king coming down the shoreline, and I was daydreaming, looking out into the ocean, had no idea it was coming. And they were screaming at the top of their lungs. I could not hear them. And I just happened to catch something out of my peripheral, and there was this. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah! Nice shot! Woo! Dad! Woo! Yeah! Yeah!
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Here's this king, and it was a tester. It was 50 yards, and the wind was howling, and I went way out in front of him and pulled the trigger, and he crushed. And I heard everybody let out a hoot, and I wanted to bawl, and it was just, you'd have thought I just completed my Grand Slam.
We were yelling at you.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
We were yelling, and he was coming right along the edge.
Because the emotion was that high.
Hey. Angel from heaven, dude.
I thought my son was going to tear my head off when he gave me a hug. It was as good as it gets.
Holy cow. It's like, that's finished. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I don't care what happens now.
I don't need it.
Now we can go home and take those birds to the taxidermist and get them mounted, and we can look at those birds and remember the times that we spent together. Times that, a lot of fathers would give anything to be able to do.